In the last couple episodes, we've been working on tearing apart these axles, and now with the third members in pieces waiting for the gears and lockers to show up, we're going to start working on tearing apart the knuckles. So as you can see, this axle and all parts associated with it are nasty and neglected. So the plan is to get everything nice and clean, like really nice and clean. Rebuild the knuckles with new bearings, races, and wiper seals, set the preload, and do a whole bunch of other stuff. These projects with this Land Cruiser, or any projects with any vehicle for that matter, they never end. So let's jump right into it. Well, the front end of the Land Cruiser is something that I've wanted to take care of since I got the truck, but I've kind of pushed it to the side to take care of the engine and the wheels and tires and suspension and everything else we've done to this truck in the meantime, because I didn't really, it's a lot of work to do the front end. It's not as much work as doing an engine, but that's way more fun. This is a bit more monotonous, I guess, but we're here and we're gonna take care of it now. It's a good thing that we're here because if you guys remember, a couple of episodes ago when we took out the front third, found that it had bad pinion bearings and they were really close to seizing up. We were basically driving around with a ticking time bomb and we just got it out right in the nick of time. And now we're taking apart the knuckles and everything else, getting all the bearings and races and all that stuff replaced in the front end so we can have a nice new fresh front end on this Land Cruiser. So let me show you guys what we're going to be installing today. So first off, we have power stops, drilled and slotted, brake rotors, and carbon fiber ceramic pads. This is the Z36 package. I guess that's just for towing, hauling, and off-road use. Of course, we're not going to be towing or hauling, but we are going to be going off-road. So we want to be able to stop and stop well. So that's why I picked these up. Then moving forward, ordered all this stuff from Yoda Masters here. So we have a Marlin Crawler Eco Seal for the inner axle seal, all the new knuckle studs, washers, cone washers, and nuts for the knuckles. And then we have tie rod ends here, the 555 tie rod ends. We have a full knuckle rebuild kit right here. So this is all the seals, the bearings, the races, the nuts, the washers, everything for the knuckles to get a nice fresh rebuild on those. Yoda Masters also sent us some cool stickers. This one I think is pretty funny, and this one's like a Minor Threat spinoff right here. We got throttle violence instead of, I think it normally says bottled violence. But anyway, let's get to it. Let's get all this stuff installed and get a nice new non-crusty front end on this Land Cruiser. So what you're not seeing here is all the grease I had to clean up in order to even get to this point that I'm at. If you've ever done one of these axles, you know how much grease is packed into the knuckle ball and all the other parts that are in here. And man, there is a lot of grease. But anyway, I'm starting by removing the bearing races with a punch and then pulling out the existing axle seal with a seal puller. You could use pliers or anything else to get ready to drive in this Marlin Crawler Eco Seal. These Eco Seals are great, and I've never had any issues with them leaking or installing or anything, so I don't plan to ever use anything but them moving forward on my Toyota axles. So I'm going to pack some grease into the backside of this just to prevent the spring from popping out, and then I can drive it right in. Now, what I'm showing you here, it's a metal guide inside the axle that is known to pop out or be missing depending on the condition of your cruiser. Just a note, it's not something that's super important. You may just find it more difficult to guide your axle back into your third member if it's not there. All right, the axle seal is in. I got the knuckle balls all cleaned up and the surface where the race goes hit with Scotch-Brite. We have the knuckle itself in my little purple power concoction here. It's getting clean, as you can see. This looks a lot cleaner than it was. So we're gonna take that out and paint it after we get the knuckle all prepared. But right now what we're gonna do is go get the races out of the freezer because it shrinks them down, makes them a lot easier to install, especially when that knuckle's baking in the sun. So the actual knuckle ball is expanding, and then the races in the freezer are shrinking. Not by much, we're talking maybe 1/10 of a thousandth of an inch, maybe, but that little bit helps it just kind of go together easier, and then once they're all settled into their place, they expand or contract back to where they were, and everything is good and happy. So let's get to it. One cold race right here. Make sure you put it in the right way. It's already kind of starting to go in by itself. Just hammer this thing in. That easy when it's cold. Just goes right in there. There we go. Now I'm removing the knuckle studs so that I can prep the knuckle for paint, but I have to remove them anyway because I'm going to be replacing them all with new studs. But man, all of these were barely tight or already loose. It's a good thing we're replacing them because, I mean, who knows how much time we had left with these studs. With the studs out, we can start masking the part, and a trick that I use is to scribe the edge of the tape with anything hard, whether it be a ratchet, a screwdriver, extension. It doesn't really matter, because what it does is it cuts the tape precisely on the edge, and then you can just peel it off and have a perfectly masked part ready for paint. It's the next day and the knuckle is looking about 1,000 times better than it did before. I also cleaned up and painted the axle housing, which has this entire front end looking so much better than it did even at the beginning of this video. And now we're ready to reinstall everything. First we have to toss on the felt, rubber, and steel rings, and then pack the knuckle bearings with a specific type of grease before we reinstall the knuckle and check preload. The knuckle stud kits that can be used on a mini truck can also be used on 80 series knuckles. So these are the Marlin Crawler 12mm knuckle studs, which come in an individual kit with the cone and flat washer plus the stud and the nut. The part number is MCHT-321. I'm torquing these studs to 45 foot-pounds and using Loctite on them as well, just for added security, and the nuts will be torqued to 71 foot-pounds once we get the steering arm back on. We're going to start off using the factory shim, which, as you can see here after we put it into the mic, is 0.21 millimeters or 0.08 of an inch. From this point, we can determine if we need more or less shim to get the right preload out of that knuckle and bearings. Well, we have a problem. As you can see here, starting preload is just gonna barely get it moving. About 3¼ 3½ pounds. The manual says right here that we need at least 5.6 pounds to almost 10 pounds. So naturally what we would do, we have an 8,000 shim or a 0.2 millimeter. We need to go down to a 4,000 shim or a 0.1 millimeter. If we go up, we're going to get less preload. It's going to space further away. If we go down, it's going to clamp it harder, more preload. Now, normally this would not be an issue because I bought a knuckle rebuild kit and it comes with everything to do the knuckles, right? Including 2 sets of shims. Well, unfortunately, I got 1 set of shims, and these ones are actually thicker than the ones I have in there, which means we're going to have even less preload, which means we'll have even more of a problem. So the question is, what do we do now? I have looked through all of this packaging, all these parts to make sure that these are the only shims, and unfortunately, they are. I didn't miss anything. And we're supposed to have 2 sets, we have 1. And I don't even know if the other set, if it had, it would be thicker or thinner than those. So there's a chance we might have the wrong ones, even if we did have 2 sets. So we have to kind of make the best of this situation. This is as far as I'd be able to get to the knuckle anyway if it were shimmed correctly, besides putting the wiper seal back on, because I can't install the burr field in the spindle or the tie rod or anything else, because I still have to build my third member. So this would be the finish point anyway, so that's good. So what we can do is we can move on to the other knuckle, get this thing torn apart, get it cleaned up, get it painted just like the other side. Maybe we'll get lucky with the shim on this side for the preload. If not, then we're gonna have to set the shim once we get the parts. That's not gonna happen in this video, but we can definitely get a lot more done, so let's keep on trucking. I actually do get the parts in this video to test out the other shims, so don't go anywhere. But it's gonna be the same process here as the other side. Start off by removing the 6 bolts that hold on the metal retainer on the back side of the knuckle, remove the felt and rubber seals, pop out the metal ring, and then start removing the upper cap and lower arm to then remove the knuckle itself. Well, I've been working off camera, and as you can see, I got the knuckle ball all cleaned up. I got the new Eco Seal in there, and the knuckle itself is inside of my parts washing bin over there, just getting all that grease off so we can get it looking like the driver's side knuckle. I got the whole front housing all painted and looking a lot nicer and newer now. So what we're gonna do is, while we're waiting for that to clean up in the parts bin, we're gonna take off this steering arm and get the ends swapped out. I was also thinking for the brake rotors, the new powerstop ones, I can't put those on yet. It's gonna be the exact same thing as why I can't put the burr fields or the spindle back together on the knuckle, and it's because I have to finish the third member first. The third member goes into the housing, the axles go into the third member, the burr fields are on the end of the axle, the spindles go over that, and then your hub assembly with your rotor and everything goes on that. So we're not gonna be able to install those new powerstop rotors in this video, but just know once we get everything back together, it's gonna be an upgrade that you'll see then. This is a great example here showing the power of editing. This did not go as fast as it seems in this video. First of all, my puller bent because of how stuck this was on there. I had to then reshape it in my vise a couple of times and then proceed to manipulate this tie rod end and pitman arm with lubricant and heat for probably an hour before I finally got this off. So don't be fooled by the editing process here. think I've spent more time cleaning and painting parts on this front end than I have actually spent working on it, but I do have some good news. I called Yoda Masters yesterday, and I left them a voicemail because it was Sunday, and they called me back today. I just got off the phone with them, and they are going to be shipping out some thinner and some thicker shims so that we could actually get the preload set correctly on those knuckles. But what they told me was really interesting. They said on 80 series that they've been working on recently that they're not running any shim at all if they can't get the preload right, because even with the thinnest shim you can get, which I believe is 10 thousandths, they're still not getting enough preload. So something after being on the road for 30 years or something like that, I would assume the metal gets worn in, tolerances change, and maybe just running no shim at all is what we're going to have to do. But we're going to toss this thing back together and see what the preload is, and if it's too much on this side, or if it's too little, on this side, then we're going to try the 10 thousandths shim when it gets here, and if that's still too little, we'll just run no shim at all. Well, it looks like we're at about 5.5 pounds of preload for the passenger side, which is actually only 1/10 of a pound under minimum spec. But even if we were at 5.6 or 5.7 pounds, I wouldn't want to keep it there. I'd rather be in the mid-range of the spec than at the very bottom or at the very top. I'd rather be at the top than the bottom, that's for sure. So those shims are supposed to show up tomorrow. Yoda Master sent it out with expedited shipping, so I didn't think we'd have them in time, but it looks like we're going to have them. So I'm going to go with the smaller shim, which I think is a 4,000 shim, which is in that kit. But in the meantime, I think we have some other stuff we can do. I feel like this corner is finally starting to come together. We have the workbench that I built. I just got this tool here to check bolt size and thread pitch. Been needing one of these for a while, so this is nice to have. Mounted it right onto that workbench. I have my Craftsman fab table that I saw on AM Custom Fab. Instantly stole that idea. I think this is great for a starter fabricator like me. Don't need to waste the money on the big expensive tables. And now we have the press in here. So when we moved, my wife told me, I'm never helping you move the press again. This thing is way too heavy for its size. So we just rolled it in here on the cart. We finally got this into the shop, and this corner is starting to take shape. And I'm gonna need the press anyway for when I do my gear install, because we have to press on and off bearings onto the carrier, onto the pinion, all that kind of stuff. But right now, what I wanna do, I already have this hub taken off of this rotor. I'm gonna take off both hubs, press out all these wheel studs because I want to replace them, and then we can at least just mock up the rotors just to see how they'll look. Is this the right way to set up a press? No. Is it going to press it out? Absolutely. These things are not very tight. It's going to give basically right now. Look, it's not really a big deal. Going to press it right out of there. Sometimes you just got to work with what you got. I definitely want to upgrade to a bigger press, but this is just what I have right now. So the reason why I'm using this weird setup with the wood and the two arbor plates is because I can't fit the center of the hub in between this area of the press. So I can't just stand this up on a block and press it if I'm holding it from the bottom of the hub, because then it will just tip when you put pressure on it. So this allows me to put pressure. It's not equal pressure, but it's at least, a downward force that's pushing these lugs out that I wouldn't be able to do otherwise. So bigger presses in the future, but for right now, yeah, this is working just fine. Yep, there it goes. All right, here's the new rotors. We're definitely gonna have to paint these hubs to make them look good with these rotors, because, man, these are a good looking piece. But we have this old shitty hub. It's gonna make it look terrible, but we're gonna have to paint these to make it look all nice. So let's just drop this thing in and see how it looks. And for the driver's side, drop this one in. Yeah, those look beefy. All right, it's a couple days later, and look what we got in the mail. They arrived late, but they did arrive. So let's go ahead and see if these are the right shims and if we can get the preload set right on these knuckles. These shims come in 4 different thicknesses. They come in 4,000s, 8,000s, 20,000s, and 39,000s, and we're looking for the 4,000s ones, which feel like these ones right here. So let's go ahead and mic these and see where we're at. And we do have the 4,000th shim. So we have an 8,000th one in there right now. That's the 0.2 millimeters, and it's a little bit too thick. So going down a size here might get us into the right preload. So let's go ahead and try it out. We gotta torque these guys to 71 foot-pounds, make sure all of our little knuckle seals and everything aren't in the way. Get these things nice and tight and see where we're at with the preload. Well, even with that 4,000 shim, we still don't have enough preload, and I'm getting really good at removing and reinstalling these knuckles at this point. But I was also thinking that the grease that we use today has to be much better than what these vehicles came with. On top of that, the bearings might be slightly different or improved, or some other sort of variable might be tossed in there where we may never get perfectly in spec with the preload as compared to what the manual calls for. So I'm starting to think this is more of a set it and forget it kind of thing if it feels right. And honestly, after running no shim at all like we're doing right now, it feels right. Well, it's 2 in the morning. We were able to get those knuckles installed. We got a late start, a very, very late start. Clearly, it's 2 in the morning. But I thought it was interesting how I'm not running a shim. And I did talk to Yoda Masters, as I told you guys, and they said sometimes you just don't run a shim on these 80 series. I kind of thought that 4,000th shim would have done the trick. But in all honesty, even without a shim, we're still a little low on the preload. We were able to get around 6.5 to 7 on each side, which is right in the middle of that range. But that's it. That's as far as we can take it. So honestly, if we wanted to get more preload, we'd have to take like 4,000ths off that cap. So I don't know if it's just because the Land Cruiser has so many miles and it's just kind of worn in and worn down on that axle, but that's as much preload as we're getting out of that. So anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this episode, guys. I'm all out of time. I have a huge trip coming up. I got to get ready for that. I got to edit this video, get it out to you guys by Sunday. So if you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Later.